So do you think, have you seen a shift sort of in the last 5 years since you've been open? Have you sort of noticed a big shift in trends of, what people used to come out for 5 years ago, or even just the amount of people that are kind of switched on to fine dining? Do things like, obviously shows like MasterChef and whatnot, and then people want to taste what they see. They see a guy doing something fancy on MasterChef and you've got on your menu. It's going to draw people in. Do you play on that at all? Is that something you...
I wouldn't say so, no. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't really watch these programmes. I kind of do my tits in, to be honest with you. I don't like them. These series like MasterChef and like a lot of these. The only one I watch is Great British Menu, but a lot of them I don't really like. So I wouldn't say...
It's very much the X factor for chefs, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And like I've seen a lot of guys that I've worked with in the past and things like that appearing on it. And they tell me about how they edited these things, and I kind of think, why would you go on to that? Because it's all up to them how they edit it to make you look, and especially like somebody with their own restaurant. They can make you look like a complete sausage on these things without you actually really doing anything wrong. So
yeah, there was that guy from Dundee, the lecturer.
But I think as you said about, have I seen any trends and changes due to all that? I think not so much in like food, but I would say definitely in customer opinion. I think the customer's a little bit more switched on to, definitely more switched on to what their idea of fine dining should be, and probably a little bit more opinionated and like to have their say a little bit more from when we first opened to now. Definitely, which presents its own challenges in a way, especially when they always say the customer's always right. I don't necessarily always agree with that. The customer is always entitled to their opinion.
I think that's a bit of saying it's the kind of rule that we go by. The customer is always heard. You always hear them, and you always make them feel heard, and they know that they've been heard, rather than necessarily being right. If that makes sense. Yeah. But it is tricky in this situation because it is opinions.
But I've over the past 5 years, I've slowly coming out of the kitchen and having a lot more to do with the front of house and having not less trust in the manager, but taking more of a part so the manager doesn't have to do as much and I can keep a closer eye on things out front as well. So you might not necessarily see me in whites every day at the table. I try to do sort of one shift a week out front on the floor as if I was a waiter. Just so I can keep an eye on absolutely everything. And through that, you definitely get a better feel. I would recommend chefs to do that. It's trying to get a bit out front experience, not just hide away in the kitchen. Just so you can understand, one, the customers, understand what they want, understand, two, exactly how your restaurant works and feels in the dining room. And it might spark ideas or it might make you cancel some ideas. I think that's a really, really important thing for cooks to do, is that they should actually see the other side. Because you know what, you'll see it time and time again. Chef hates waiter, waiter hates chef, fights across the pass. And I think the main reason for that is that they don't understand each other's jobs. So I think if somebody just took a couple of weeks and went and got some training, just a couple of days, and saw the other side, how it works and understood it, they would have a different understanding of how the restaurant or how the kitchen needs to run. So do you certainly made me change a good few things.
Yeah. Do you have not any issues with it, but the chefs in your restaurant, the chefs drop plates at all? Is that something that you've ever thought? Do the chefs ever drop the plates to the tables? Do they serve the food ever? Is that something that you've...
It's mainly that happens when we've maybe got a big party in and maybe not enough waiters, because we're the restaurant's split on 2 levels. It can be quite difficult sometimes to get a table of 10, say, served within a minute. Far too many plates and not enough hands. So yeah, when there's a big table and we're up and running, we've usually got minimum two front of house on. But if it's like I said, if it's a table of 10, there's 3 chefs in the kitchen as well. So myself and 2 others. So there's another 6 pairs of hands. So all of a sudden we've got a table of 10 served within seconds rather than up and down, and they're all waiting to start eating. So yeah, we do. And now and again, if the guy, we've got like a buzzer system that we use, like a pager system. You page in, you page twice, and then then usually the next reaction would be service. So we've done away with all that. And now it's chef, table 10, ladies having the lamb, gentlemen serving the fish, out you go. And they know who's having what, and they put it down, this is that, enjoy your meal, thank you very much. And they like that, you know?
There's something about being a customer as well that, you know, if you're served by the chef, there's something more special about that. Not that there's anything wrong with well, yeah.
Apron on food, take it off, please.
We used to have that. We used to have chef jackets hanging up at the door so that you could grab one as you're walking out and stick it on. But then you don't look like you've been working hard.
My apron going to the table, just take it off.
But there's definitely something to be said from a customer point of view about the chef, even just having a presence, like you're saying, you know, yourself being out in front once a week, which. I mean, I don't know, how do your front of house staff enjoy that?
I think they were a little bit apprehensive at first, and pretty much because I couldn't do their job at first, I had to kind of get a bit of training myself. But once I got to grips with how it works and how to run a section and all that kind of stuff out front, and you get to know the job, then you can start to pick holes in where you think the problems are. So it was all fine with all the guys at first when it was them showing the chef, but now that the chef can run rings around them, it was a bit like, oh, you didn't do that, you didn't do that, we need to do this better, that needs to be better. You start picking holes in it. That at first they were a little bit like, I'm not sure if I like this, and then once they realised that I was right, they were like, oh yeah, okay. And then you introduce something, they try it, and it's actually made their life easier. They're like, oh, yeah, okay. You know what I mean?
Because I think there is a lot of aspects of the kitchen that you can implement front of house wise, even just structurally, you know, and systems and whatnot.
I find they don't have the organisational skills of a chef that you kind of get naturally, you know, like putting things away neatly and having things in orders, and you know, that kind of like systematic thing that gets drilled into you. I find a lot of front of house don't have. So when with the chef's eye coming in and going, well, why are you not doing it like that? That makes more sense. And then they're like, oh my God, my life has changed.
I can almost hear all the front of house staff screaming at you right now. There'll be a few people losing their head a bit. So you're saying as well, you're going to be expanding a little bit into doing a private chef sector almost.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been talking about our last expansion, which kind of went wrong for us. I think it's probably quite important to talk about Castle Hill as well before we go into that. Is that okay?
Yeah, you can talk about it, because there's a few things I was almost like, I don't know if you're going to want to talk about these things, or maybe not mention it just in case. Because there was at one point, it almost seemed like you had your finger in every pie in Dundee. And there's obviously a lot of pies in Dundee. It seemed like you were kind of doing everything at once. You know, there was something opening over there, and you were doing something else, and there was something else. It was almost, it was a lot to take on.
It was a lot to take on. So a lot of it kind of happened almost by accident. Taking back Castle Hill was at first a great idea, but it was almost like somebody landed us a deal that was too good to be true. So we took the restaurant on, kind of knowing that it was failing already, but thought we could kind of turn that around because we kind of knew where the problems were. So we took it on knowing that it was kind of failing already, and in the way of standards and service and sorting all those kind of problems out, 100% we turned it around. It was much better. The sort of, especially on the food side, people were actually saying how much they enjoyed it, and they'll come back now that it's all fixed and blah blah blah. So that was great. There was a lot of heavy overheads that we probably jumped in a bit too quick without doing all the sums. But we thought, you know, being in the city centre, there'd be a higher turnover, more footfall through the door with the city centre as opposed to being out in the ferry. So sort of weighed that up and thought, with a business plan, that should all work out okay. And the fact of the matter was that it just started to hemorrhage money. There was no lunch trade whatsoever in the town. I think people were out for a quick bite to eat, burgers, all that kind of stuff. You know, there's so many places in the town as well that are putting out, like fast food and things that people can just come, sit down, be served within minutes. Have food in front of them within minutes and quick scoffing away. and to offer a fine dining service, find, well, that's not the case. I wasn't really willing to sort of change the model so much that it wasn't me. You know what I mean? And all of a sudden it just started to hemorrhage money, and we had a really, really bad September, October, where revenue was down by like 65-70%. And I was like, where's all my customers gone? And it wasn't due to any bad reviews or anything like that. It was just business was dried up. And so it started to sink. And I was like, I either keep pumping money from the Tabery into Castle Hill, which was then, bringing the mothership down, or, I was like, this isn't worth it. It's just not worth it. And I was run ragged. I just had a 1-year-old. I've got a 1-year-old now. It just had a baby. So I was trying to do that, and at the same time, I'd already committed to doing the cook school with Lewis, who seems to be still storming away quite well. So, well, obviously not just now, we're on lockdown, but so the cook school on the go. The deli was part of the same building, so we kind of opened the deli first. And I just got to the point, I realised once I thought it's time to shut Castle Hill, I was like, do I actually really want to do all this? I've got a young family at home. I've never seen them because I'm busy trying to take over the world here. And I just thought, I don't really want to be the dad that's never there. And I headed to weigh up what's more important to you, and I chose family. Definitely, I kind of thought that time to settle down a little bit, go back to what you know. It's been fun, but let's just calm down a bit, Adam, and make a living for me and family rather than trying to take on the world.
Like you say, it's a total shift when it's no longer. I think they always say that when you have a kid, and that it's no longer about you. You almost don't matter anymore. It's all about what you can do.
When I spoke to you, it's a bit more about security now. It's making sure that they've got income for the wee one, and we've got one business completely solid and secure, and we're not trying to take risks by more business, which is where we were. So yeah, I'm much more happy now. I think where we are, just focused on the one thing. But like I was saying about having the next sort of little expansion thing, was instead of taking on more business, which you generally meant more premises and more overheads and more everything else, we kind of decided to see what else we can do then with what we've already got. So I'd done a few gigs, like we're just kind of people ask me to do these things intermittently, like would you come out and cook for us at this event or whatever. McRoberts Solicitors, I do quite a lot of bits and bobs for them, like private dinners in their boardroom and things like that. I just set up a little pop-up kitchen. I've got some equipment I bring along with me. And so I really started enjoying doing these things. And I thought, well, why not? Why not maybe make more of a thing of this? And so we've come up with this idea for Tabery to You, which is exactly as it sounds. It's bringing the Tabery right to you. So we bring all the cutlery, crockery, glassware, tablecloths, the food, me, you name it, waiting staff, and basically we build a restaurant in your house for the night. Come in, we look after you. It's up to you how you want it to run, whether you want to host it or we can host it, for you. And we design a menu for you, exactly what you like, and match wines and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, the whole experience comes to your house.
Do you do the dishes though?
We do all the dishes.
Is that to make or break that?
Yeah, no, there's nothing for you to do. We clean your kitchen down at the end of it and everything. So
if that was me, I'd maybe leave them stacking up for a few days before you came, and then get the most for your money that way.
That's good. But no, we do everything. That's the idea. But so obviously with lockdown, we thought this was the ideal opportunity to kind of help push the Tabery to You brand out. So that's kind of what we've been selling all the takeaways through is Tabery to You, because essentially we're trying to bring the Tabery to your home. So
it's almost going to be it's been born out of lockdown almost, and it's going to continue through. Yeah. It's almost that you get I suppose it's a really good time to iron everything out now. I mean, before you do a full launch,
on some form of takeaway business going. Even once we're out of lockdown, not quite sure how we're going to do it yet, but kind of in our sights in a minute. having a little bit extra revenue coming in with some sort of takeaway service, as well as having the restaurant running, and having our occasional events with Takeaway to You as well. So, yeah,
that's kind of this is how we read it. I was working in Art Growth at the time, actually, and it was when I think it was you just landed the job at Castle Hill as the head chef. And the story, what I don't know how true it is, but the story was, you know, the guy, you had to go to the guy's house and do a dinner party for him.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah,
that was part of the interview, and I always thought like, that must have been fucking nerve-wracking. I don't know if I could have handled something like that.
it was a little bit actually, especially because at the time I didn't have like a stock of equipment to use and all this kind of stuff. I was working for somebody else. I didn't want to say to them, by the way, can I borrow this, that, the next thing, the ice cream maker, and what are you doing that for? I wanted to let them know that I was planning to leave. So
Yeah.
I kind of just had to do it with bits of kit that I had in the house and try to make a sort of fine dining meal the best that I could do to get the job. To get the job, but it was a little bit scary, but not so much that I was terrified. It was just a little bit like a formality that like I'd already kind of been offered the job and to come and do it. They just wanted to kind of put the proof in the pudding that I could actually pull it off and I could cook good, because they'd only ever heard about me off a good faith, you know. So.
And now you're kind of going back to that, you know, cooking in people's houses again. It's almost full circle.
It's gone full circle. But you know, I actually really enjoyed it when I was setting up the Takeaway. I'd left Castle Hill, and I got the site for the Takeaway, and it was going to be a long time to do all the building work. And, I don't know if you knew the restaurant before, but it was a bit of a bomb site.
I'd never been to it. I'd heard about it.
Yeah, so it was only a restaurant down the stairs, and it was a flat upstairs. So we knocked the flat out and did a massive renovation to taking out load-bearing beams and all this kind of stuff. Just it was carnage. And yeah, at aged 24, taking on a building work project, that was another experience.
Having to be a site manager and a chef.
Oh Jesus Christ! Yeah, like never again. That was like the most stressful time in my life. But yeah. I was doing all that, but I had to keep myself in house at home. I didn't have money to. I only had the money to put from investment to put into the restaurant. I hadn't included money for me to live on through all that. It was like a 3 or 4 month project to get the building work done. So I was working for Wild Time outside catering at the outside catering company.
Yeah,
I'd never done that before, so that was great. I really enjoyed my time. Andy Hamer and the guys up there were really good to me, and they sent me to do quite a few events. Like they cater for anything for a couple of thousand people down to 10. So there's a couple of events that they just sent me with the waiting staff to go and pull off an event in somebody's house with a bespoke dinner for 10, 15 people. I loved it. I thought it was great fun because I had left my own devices. I was getting cooked the food. You didn't really have a sort of set recipe as such. You just kind of had the guidelines of what was required. You know, fillet steak with dauphinoise and this and that, and you know. And after that, it was up to you. Cook it, present it exactly how you want it. Perfect. So it was kind of free reign to just have a bit of fun, and the guests were always really appreciated it, and even though they were paying for it, you know, they got high praise for what we did, and I loved it. So if I could do this more often, it'd be nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a bit of fun being out of your comfort zone. You get used to being in your own kitchen, and all of a sudden you're in you have no idea what you walk into because it's somebody's house. You know, there could be a little 4-burner, or they could have a great big aga, or you know, you have no idea what you're going to be cooking on that night.
A camping stove and a microwave.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll be done.
Yeah.
It's nice to get that.
There's a few stories with them that there's great fun and a few sticky situations. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but I was catering for them and for their company, and it was the first bigger event I'd been left to do. But I think it was for 100 and something people, and it was like bowl food, like oversized canopies kind of thing we were having. The First Minister was there. There was some other big names there. We got all the food off the van, and to my understanding, it was the sort of assistants, the kitchen portery kind of people that sort of packed all the equipment up and brought it with them. And I thought it was just a standard thing that they did. And so we arrived on site, and I says, "Where's all the pots and pans? You're supposed to pack them, chef. You're supposed to tell us what you want." We didn't see anything on the list. I was like, "Oh, come on, guys, we're cooking for 100 and odd folk. Filling need a pot or a pan." You know? And so we arrived on site with not a stitch, and we had to pull it off. So I was going around every canteen and place that I knew close by in Glasgow that I could get my car to borrow a few trays and pans. And there wasn't very many that would give us anything. So have you ever tried cooking a risotto for 120 people on a shallow gas stove tray?
I don't fancy that at all.
Honestly, I've never sweated in my life trying to pull that off. It's hilarious,
but you did it. You got it out there.
We did it. We pulled it off. We got there. Everyone was happy. Nobody was any of the wiser apart from the KPs trying to pull burnt risotto off a gas stove tray.
No, that's a minor oversight. That's just minor.
Yeah, no pots and pans.
No, that is something. But I think as well, something that we've touched on a little bit earlier on is, the impact of opinion. The things that, totally different topic, right? But the impact that, people nowadays, we're having social media and whatnot, it's almost like everybody's a critic. Everybody's there. And I don't necessarily think people appreciate the impact that they can have on just one person's experience can have on your business as a whole. Which I think your son, obviously, that you've experienced recently, obviously, was it wasn't actually any fault of your own, I think, if I remember right. You were actually in the right. So.
Yeah, we had some pretty bad, I don't know if it's bad PR or not, I don't really know how to classify it. We had a guy who had a takeaway from us and seemed to enjoy it at the time and never grumbled about anything. And then a few days later, we got this message saying that he thought he'd been charged twice, and showed us a picture of his bank account showing us that there was 2 transactions. Anyway, long story short, it turns out that the customer hadn't been charged twice. We were able to prove that from our side, from our banking guys, and from our bank, third-party provider, that the online payment hadn't been made twice, and it seemed to be an error at his bank's end. So if you just please phone his bank, and I'm sure he'll be able to get the thing sorted out as soon as possible. Anyway, this guy just decided to get on his keyboard and just go crazy, and basically was calling us out, typed up this article, brandishing us as the worst. The Table is the worst restaurant in Dundee or something like that. It said.
I'm not going to lie, I did read it.
Yeah,
somebody
it's totally slanderous.
I made him send it to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely outrageous. I mean, absolutely none of it's true either. That's what I kind of said and all this. The most annoying thing is that we hadn't actually done anything wrong. If you'd done something wrong, you kind of hold your hands up and say, "Look, really sorry about that." You'd even make a public apology if you thought it was necessary. You'd make sure the customer was squared up, compensated. Whatever you need to do to make it right, you would do it. But this guy was basically holding us over the coals for something that wasn't our fault. And I kind of thought, I'm not being bullied by an online troll, especially when we haven't done anything wrong.
There is that sense of vulnerability though in a restaurant, because it is probably one of the only industries. I think you probably get similar things to TripAdvisor and other industries. I mean, you're never sitting behind an office desk and somebody comes up to you and says, you're shit at your job, you've not done this, you've not done that. You don't get that and it's something that seems to be quite unique.
And it's horrible because the way the troll thing was kind of worded, it was threatening in the way that it was saying, I'm going to keep slating your business until I see it closed. And I was like...
Well, there was a bit of that at the start of the article, I think, that I read, because a friend of mine who's a chef, he's got a takeaway. He messaged me and he said, this is disgusting. Like the way that this customer's speaking about this business. As a business owner, it's hard. It's a tough read, and because not everybody takes things like that with a pinch of salt. People take things like that at face value and say, it must be.
I think as well, people don't realise, you're a business owner, okay, you got your own business. I think sometimes people think that means you're a millionaire. It's not. It's if anything,
it's the opposite.
and more to worry about financially than ever before. And so, if he's threatening that this is going to bring my restaurant down, somebody is doing that kind of thing, maybe doesn't think about the fact that if my restaurant doesn't work, I don't have an income, and I have a small child at home, that affects her as well. And that's what really got my back up, and I got really defensive about it because like, that's your kid. You don't go after people's kids. You know what I mean? That's
no, definitely.
And I see it kind of coming down, that way. Maybe they're attacking the restaurant, not my child, but to me,
so do you think there's a place for because there is such there's so much weight behind people's opinion, but it is such a personal thing. That one person has an experience that they would say is substandard. The next guy, it's the best meal he's ever had in his life. So where do you think there's a place for that, especially after lockdown? Moving on into, I guess, a new era for all businesses, really. Do you think there is a place for? Yeah, kind of. Not necessarily. I mean, obviously, people are going to talk. They're going to say what they want to say. We kind of take the stance. We don't look. We don't tend to look at our, any TripAdvisors and whatnot, because it does have a personal effect.
Yeah. We've stopped looking at it TripAdvisor as well. Mainly, my wife's a little nervous being, she cares so much about the restaurant, and we were getting to the point where we were waking up in the morning. The first thing we were checking was TripAdvisor to see what had happened at the weekend because we didn't like it. And I got to the point, I was like, Rachel, this is not good for my mental health. First thing I'm waking up to is you telling me about somebody's complaint. Can you please wake up and tell me about the restaurant?
Yeah, just read the 5 stars.
Yeah, exactly. So I was like, this is not good. So yes, there's never going to be a restaurant that never has complaints. It's impossible. It's like anything. Food. Does everyone like everything in food? No. Like, I like a Hawaiian pizza. The wife doesn't. It's all about opinions. We've got a blue cheese ice cream on the last menu before we closed. Now, I love blue cheese, but not everyone loves blue cheese. And throwing blue cheese ice cream into a sort of it was like a halfway home between a dessert and a cheese course. It was like alien to some people. Yeah. Some people went absolutely mad for it and loved it, and they were back. And the people that were regulars that were asking for just a portion of that ice cream on the side. So it's one of these things that people will always have opinions. I just think that people need to realise that their opinion doesn't necessarily need to be heard. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Especially if it's a negative thing, because it is quite damaging to people's reputation, especially if they're going to leave a star rating on something. You know what I mean? Fair enough. Saying to the waiter or the chef, whatever, that they didn't really enjoy that. Sorry about that. Can we do anything else for you? That's an easy thing to fix. But when you're going to go and actually write something on a public forum or, whatever, a review, and you're going to leave them a 1-star review just because something wasn't to your taste, I don't really think
there should be a little pop-up that comes up when people click 1 star or 2 star that just says, remember, there's somebody behind this place. Somebody's putting all the time, effort, money. They're sacrificing so much to build this thing. Are you sure you want to give it 1 star?
Restaurants to defend themselves a little bit as well, because I read an article. I'll keep going back a good while now, but it was about a restaurant that was basically getting held to ransom. They were getting emails saying that we are going to leave you 10 bad TripAdvisor reviews if you don't deposit this amount of money into our account or whatever. And you're like, how does a restaurant react to that?
Yeah. What do you do?
Shit yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you're
down the rank, especially if you're in like a place like London where the competition is so fierce. How do you?
That's a tricky one.
And also I don't know if you saw the article about the guy who faked the restaurant.
Yeah, it was at the Sheds.
He left all these great TripAdvisors on and for him and put his pals to these great amazing TripAdvisors. The restaurant that was just him in his back door pretending.
Yeah. I did like that.
TripAdvisor didn't work, so
it does show the 2 sides of it.
TripAdvisor, as I like to call it, is not always the best.
There is that. I mean, we kind of
the restaurants can fight back a bit more. Not fight. That's the wrong. You don't want to fight with the customers, but
it's interesting.
A bit more that you can go back to them on, and maybe if something's really not okay for somebody to say, they can maybe delete that comment. You know what I mean?
There's a place in St Andrews. Oh no, sorry, you go.
We had one that I tried to reply to TripAdvisor. It's still on there. But it's absolutely shocking. And there was a guest in the dining room who she was obviously drunk, but took a disliking to one of the members of staff. She had a name badge on, so just publicly tore her apart on TripAdvisor, which was really, really cruel, like in a not nice way, not just like commenting exception of the standard, whatever, like just tore her apart. And the poor girl hadn't really done anything wrong. She'd forgotten a drink to take up to her table or something like that. Nothing that was like that bad, really. And yeah, she just tore her an absolute new one, but actually by name, and was calling for her to be sacked and everything on the review. And that had a real damage to that girl. Do you know what I mean? It really blew her confidence. She was terrified that I was going to sack her because of this bad review. And I was like, no. Of course, I was like, no, I'm not going to sack you. And we had a chat about it. Not so much to give her a row for anything that she did wrong, but more for to make sure she was okay, because it was like really quite horrible what was being said about her, and
it could be a bit of a vicious place.
How is that okay that can be removed? Why should you be able to publicly insult somebody in their about their work in the workplace? Like what you're saying, you wouldn't get that in an office.
Especially when it's younger.
Taking a bit different slate in the business, but insulting an individual employee, that's bang out order.
Yeah, I think there's a difference, because as a business, most of the team that work there can almost separate themselves from it. Maybe not the same with like yourself. If somebody insults the Tabery, that's it's you, that you feel that it's personal. If they insult the Tabery and you just work on a Saturday or whatever, it maybe doesn't affect you the same. But when they're naming people, that's when it becomes
names out,
Yeah, especially if they're younger staff as well. That's that'd be really damaging. It's not.
Yeah, totally.
Ideal. But then there was a place in St Andrews. I think it's maybe closed now. But they did the round on Facebook. The link to his TripAdvisor, because he replied to every single comment, and he was just such an arse. Like, he was full on. Like, fuck you, don't come back, don't like you anyway, don't want your custom, go fuck yourself. It was properly every single one, and it was hilarious to read. Like, every review was 1 star, but he was probably going at it. So there is an argument for, if you can. My dad's quite bad for replying to them. My dad likes to reply to some of these reviews on TripAdvisor. I don't even like looking at them. But
I get my wife to write the replies, because mine would have a lot of swear words in them. So I get.
Well, I try and avoid my wife from writing.
Writes it in a better way.
Yeah, well, see, I get that with my old man. I sometimes have to. I do say to him a couple of times, Jake, we could have maybe worded that a bit nicer. Like, Jake, we could have maybe said that. But it's funny. It can be funny to read. But
I think you can't reply to every single one. Like I said, there's no restaurant that's perfect, 100%. Even some of the best restaurants in the world will have their bad reviews. You go on the likes of Andrew Fairley's TripAdvisor. There's some terrible reviews on there, but does that really reflect what the restaurant's like? When it's got however many hundreds of 5-star reviews? No, come on.
It's tricky.
Yes, I mean, I don't tend to really put my faith in these kind of review sites. People will come to the restaurant. If they enjoy it, they'll come back. And I think business really is sometimes as simple as that,
Because there is that as well. If you have a really good experience in a restaurant, the first thing you think is not, I'll go and TripAdvisor that. If you have a really bad experience, that's the first thing you'll do. I'm going to put that on TripAdvisor. Yeah, so you almost have a bias.
We maybe get some reviews that are not as good as they should be. That's what I said about it. Yeah, you might have one terrible TripAdvisor, but it says, how many customers have you served at an amazing time here, had a great night, but would never think to leave it a positive TripAdvisor? It's true. People like to go on these online forums when they need a moan, which is sadly the way it is. It's just it's the way human nature is. I mean, if you if you buy a telly and the telly comes and it works fine, you never send them a response saying, "Wow, this telly's great," but if it's got a huge big crack in the screen, you're right on the phone to them, giving them, you know what I mean? So,
yeah, definitely. I mean, we did it's funny, we got, I think it's happened twice now, actually. That was quite nice when a customer actually phoned up and said, I've just had this. It's when we're doing the deliveries and that. I really, really enjoyed it. In fact, I just want to phone and say thank you very much. And I'm always like, how is there not more of you? Where is all the people that think that the same way? Because that's really...
I think sometimes it just, that little bit of kindness when you're working your hardest, it goes a long way. It definitely does.
Definitely does spot on. Well, I think I've pretty much covered everything that I was planning to, unless there's anything else that you want to... Anything you've got going on you want to...
I don't think there's anything else. No, not really. I think it's just, well, we're in the middle of doing. I thought this was the perfect opportunity while we're closed to do a bit of a refurb on the restaurant. And it's been 5 years now, and there's a few things that look a little bit tired. So, while we're closed, we've got an amazing interior designer in actually. We actually stumbled across. She actually just pulled up in front of the restaurant one day to go to the beach, and I just so happened to be going out to take a bin bag out, and she was driving this like old vintage car. And I commented on it, and we got chatting, and then I said, "Well, would you like to come and have a look?" And off she went. And so now we're doing a bit of business together. She's redesigning the restaurant, so it'll be a whole new Tabury restaurant, to decor-wise to see once we get reopened, whenever that may be. So a fresh look, fresh start, and new opening times, and there's a lot. I think this is a perfect opportunity for restaurants if they were ever wondering about changing stuff and how do they make people change? Well, this is almost like a restart for everyone anyway, for the economy, for everything. So now is the time to do it. So we're going to start opening on a Sunday. So we're doing Sunday lunch, where we never did that before, and closing on a Tuesday. And so our new operating hours will be Wednesday to Sunday, lunch and dinner Wednesday to Saturday, and lunch only on the Sunday. So we'll see how that flies with everyone, and fingers crossed it'll work. So that's the...
Certainly sounds good. I mean, there's something nice about going to a freshly refurbed restaurant. There's I like both aspects. Going to one that's been around for ages and it's still got some of the original stuff. And there's a certain character to it. But I think if you are going for that modern kind of cutting edge feel, it's nice to go and everything's looking fresh. It's looking sharp.
What we've done is we took the decor at the start. We never had interior design at the start. We had an architect who is absolutely fantastic, and he kind of designed the restaurant like an architect would design a house. He kept it very sort of clean and minimal, which I think was the right thing to do at the start. But I think now that we've kind of got our identity, we know who we are, we kind of know what the feel of the restaurant is. So now that the blank canvas sort of decor can now be a little bit more upgraded and made it ours now. You know what I mean? So we found the parts of the restaurant that take an absolute battering because it's quite small, so we get people like brushing up against walls and ladies' jewellery, scraping against walls and things, and so we've kind of know which bits take a bit of a battering. So we're going to use some really, really nice plaster work that's getting done, so it's like solid but really decorative in the foyer, and then when you come up the restaurant, up the stairs in the restaurant. Before you come to the private dining room, we've got like a little bit of booth seating, not booth seating, but like bench seating, fixed seating, which is a kind of little bit of a dead space at the moment because it was really designed at the start to have like a sort of small champagne reception area up there, which we've not really had much uptake on for when the private dining room's getting used. So we're going to corner that off and make it into more table space. So we'll be able to take our colours up to 42 from 36. So a few more extra tables just by putting up some sort of decorative screens and things like that.
It's interesting the amount of things that get kind of overlooked like that when you're setting up a place. Things like, where's going to get the most wear and tear? Like you said, people scuffing up against walls.
Things like
I've always found that interesting.
The carpet in the private dining room's coming up because it's 5 years old, and you'd think it was 40 years old by the amount of foot traffic it's had. So we're ditching the carpet and we're going with a beautiful tile up the stairs. So that's all getting done as well. So it's just all that kind of stuff that's just over time needs done and re-looked at. We bought all new table bases; they've arrived already because with a few wibbly tables starting to show. So yeah, just all that kind of. Some of it's just maintenance, but some of it's like no fresh start. So we're quite.
Yeah, I think as well. Once you see, because obviously beforehand you've got an idea of what you want and an idea of how it's going to run, and very quickly that unravels and kind of becomes completely different than what you were first anticipating. So it's a good opportunity to kind of.
The wife said, "Well, please, Adam, you just get all your tat off the walls because I'm really bad for it. I'm like that in the house as well.
Yeah,
well, that'd be nice. Just stick it up on a wall, get a hammer and a nail, and just think that would be nicely there. I'm not the best at that, so I need a little bit of guidance. So Sally's from Mojo Designs coming in to help us out with all that. So yes, a new look for us, which I'm really excited about actually. And the bar's finally getting ripped out because I've hated it since we opened.
Yeah,
the ovens by the bar, it was the most impractical thing ever. It was bad at the start, so
a fresh start.
Yeah, fresh start. New glass washer as well, because there's all these things that you just think, oh my god, I hate that, I hate this. The glass washer kept breaking on down, so a bit in the bullet. Got a new shiny glass washer, so the guys will remember that when they get reopened. So, yeah,
it's the little things.
Yeah, happy environment. Everything will be working. Everything's been because it's one of these things as well. When you're running a busy restaurant, sometimes trying to find the time to get all these little things fixed and maintenance stuff. It just kind of falls behind when it's busy, you know. So
we made that mistake once.
On a Sunday morning when you wake up and you've been working 80 odd hours, you don't want to go down to the restaurant and be off and start fixing the equipment. You know, you just want to put your feet up. And
my old man did that. He went around. It must have only been a couple hours before service, and he just gave all the doors a fresh lick of paint because they were looking a bit tatty. Fresh lick of white paint, all the doors. I think he told me, and it just got busy, and I forgot to tell anybody else. And next thing you know, there was a handful of staff walking around covered in white paint, and it was it's not ideal. Definitely not ideal. But no,
fresh uniforms required.
Yeah, definitely. But no, I wish you all the best when you do get around to open back up, whenever that is, whenever that's going to be. I don't think anybody knows.
Find out.
But
whenever Nicola gives us the thumbs up.
Well, so we'll wait and see. But no, thank you very much for your time as well. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's been
just going out when
interesting. Well, so we'll get it all edited up together. I've got another one. I don't know if I've got Adam Handler.
Adam.
I think he's a little word. So I've got a chat with him tomorrow. So we're wanting to get maybe 4 of them. So I'll get another one done after that. And we'll get them all together and upload them all almost all at the same time. So I'll give you a heads up beforehand. We've got imagery and whatnot to go up with it, so I can send you all the stuff, and you can post about it if you want. You let people know where to find it and whatnot. The idea between putting it up, you kind of pay it per upload, so it kind of makes more sense to get a few together and upload them at the same time.
That's fine. Yeah.
So yeah, we do that. I had an interesting one yesterday with a guy called Keelan Higgs from Dublin. He was a 1 Michelin star. He had the same kind of idea as you, almost like when he was younger, it was all about fancy, high end, and now he's kind of stripped it right back to basics. And he got his 1 Michelin star just as a byproduct of doing that, essentially. So it's really interesting hearing the themes between all these chefs. It's all always kind of the same pattern that everybody seems to go through.
I think it's part of like a natural progression almost in a way. I mean, when Gary Watson's always sort of mentored me, and it is kind of like that. Every idea that I've ever thrown at Gary, generally it's been helping me with competitions and things like that. And I've had like hundreds of ideas written down, and he's always picked the most simple one and then stripped it back even more for me.
Yeah,
just do it like that. And I was like, really? Is that it? And I was like, I'll be able to knock that out in minutes. He was like, exactly. Take your time with it and do it right.
Okay. Gary, he sounds interesting. Mate, no. I've always kind of fancied it, but I've never sort of been in a position where I've never really known where to look for them, to be honest. I've never actively hunted out these.
Scotland's mainly the place to be for them, but I used to be on the board of the Federation of Chefs Scotland as well, actually. Got invited. I kind of came away from it. I wasn't really too sure about whether it was right for me, but
Yeah.
they run the majority of the competitions, and I love being a part of all them. Just it's not for anything really, like it's not because you have to, you're hungry to win them or anything. Just for the sheer sort of thrill of it,
Yeah.
you're in front of an audience, you've got to make it happen. You fuck up, you're gonna look like a right twat. It's just that kind of thrill. I've had some success with it, but I would even if it wasn't about winning, I would compete time and time again. There's not, sadly, there's not much out there now for like guys my age to compete, which I've kind of mentioned about the federation that needs to be more for the older guys. You know what I mean?
Because I think as well, if that's you almost hitting your prime of you've kind of. I guess. I mean, I suppose I don't know if you ever kind of hit a peak. I suppose you're constantly learning, you're constantly evolving what you're doing.
But I just think that.
But there should be a space for that.
Based on young chefs, which is good. Don't get me wrong. Like we want to entice the young guys in, but I just think like we could do a few more competitions out there that are for not necessarily calling us the old dogs, but like guys that are a little bit older than 25. Because there's class in juniors is 25 and under. So I'm 29 now, so I suppose I'm classed as an old dog. Age 29 and old, apparently. But they should have more stuff like that. They've got Chef of the Year, but outside of that, it's like, well, where's the live cooking now? You know what I mean?
Is that something you'd be interested in doing yourself?
What do you mean?
Almost, I almost kind of. I'm always under the impression that if there's something that you're looking for that doesn't exist.
I'd make it happen yourself.
Yeah,
it's not the worst idea, to be honest with you. I'd like to host a competition. There's a lot of sort of rules that go into like how they're judged and things. So you need a body like Federation of Chefs to get on board with it. But I think a lot of the reason that they don't exist is the sponsorship. They cost a lot of money to put on a competition. You've got to hire all the equipment. You've got to find a space that's got the facilities to let you hire it.
Yeah.
So that there's a lot more to it than just we're going to have a competition. You've got to really plan it out, especially for a live cook-off. It's got to be well thought out.
Could be an idea with the cooking school in Dundee opening up, because that looks fairly well kitted out.
Ideal site. I've competed in the Game Chef of the Year before. That was held at Brayhead's Cook School.
Yeah.
I think there's definitely something that can be done more for the older guys, but sometimes it's just time as well. Try to get these things organised. It's not always on our side, but
well, it would be good to keep everybody on their toes as well. Everybody's kind of, because one thing I find personally quite difficult is when you are sort of, it's almost like there's nobody above you anymore. There's nobody pushing you. Push yourself to learn. You don't have somebody above you teaching you all these new things all the time. Like it was great being a young, in your teens and whatnot. You could float around kitchens and like a sponge soaking up information off every chef you meet, until you take on your own thing or you're a head chef, and then suddenly it's kind of almost hit a wall. It's like, well, where am I getting my new techniques from? Where am I learning this, that, and the next thing that I didn't learn in these kitchens before I landed this job? There's which I think is something like a competition would be
That's the answer to that.
Good, thanks.
I'm actually in my outhouse at the minute. I've had to come and hide out here because the little would be jumping all over me. My cookbooks live out here because the wife is fed up of seeing them. They've been relegated to outside in the outdoor storage area, but that's that's just half of them.
So, what's your best one in there?
Best or favourite? That's a different question.
Probably a favourite one.
My favourite one that's here, because I've got a lot of them at the restaurant as well. They sit on the bookshelf of the restaurant. My favourite one that is here is, I think, I like a lot of them. Let's see which ones are actually here first. Probably the Square cookbook. Philip Edwards. Can you see that?
Oh, nice. No, I've never even seen that one actually, to be honest.
the Square. Philip Howard, the restaurant's called the Square as well. I was lucky enough to eat there before it closed, quite a few years ago now. And I met Philip Howard at the Scottish Chefs Conference as well. Amazing, absolutely amazing. He's got a second book out now as well. But yeah, that's probably. I think the majority of my favourites are actually at the restaurant because they get more.
Yeah.
They get more viewing there.
Do you ever get because there's a classics like there's White Heat, Marco Pierre White's one. That's a good read. I like that. That's a good book. There's also a few.
I actually love one thing I love doing is getting cookbooks and then going and eating the places that I've got them that I've read up about.
Yeah,
so, like that's kind of my some people buy cars and things like that. I like to just go and stuff my face in fancy restaurants. So,
I like that with the Relish. I don't know if you remember that. I don't think they do it anymore.
Yeah.
Relish Scotland, yeah. Because I got that at. I actually got it in Rocca. I was in Rocca Bar and Grill in St Andrews, and me and the wife were eating in there, and they just not the fancy bit. We were downstairs, like in the pits of it, like only in the expensive bits. But I got the Relish book there. I think I got it for free actually. I think she gave me it, which was quite nice. So it's interesting flicking through it and seeing all these. I mean, because you were at the seafood restaurant, was it in St Andrews as well?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
There, because that was in the Relish book as well. It was, but it was interesting. It was nice just seeing all these kind of places that you can actually go to in a cookbook. They'd all supplied sort of 3 recipes each, and it was pictures of all the chefs and whatnot. I mean, you could really, it was a bit of an insight. And before the kind of everything was big on social media, it wasn't. Maybe I was just behind the times, but Instagram and that wasn't really a thing. But that's maybe 7 years ago now, maybe a bit longer than that, 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So it wasn't such a big influence.
I've ever done was it was for our first anniversary. Before we had the wee one, we decided we went on a holiday, did a cruise, which was transatlantic across to New York. And I've always loved Daniel Boulud's food. I think he's an absolute inspiration. And I had his book. I really like that. That is probably my favourite book that I've got. Is Daniel Boulud's book because it shows you all the stuff that he does in his restaurant, and then you flick to the back and it shows you all the stuff he was doing back in the 80s, and it's like, wow, the skill level of that man back in the 80s. There's no chefs kicking around these days that can do that kind of stuff. It's absolutely amazing. And then
there's a lot of lost techniques, eh?
Oh yeah, and then we were lucky enough to manage to get a table at Danielle's and go and eat there the night of our anniversary, which was
really
unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable. So was the bill. The bill was unbelievable as well. but
I expect it.
What an experience! It was absolutely brilliant. It was honestly the best one I've ever had.
It's funny because we get that quite a lot. I mean, I'm doing our kind of signature dish at the restaurant. Do a feather blade of beef. And at the time, when I was shown it a few years ago, and I kind of thought, I guess I thought it was kind of a modern thing. I don't know why. And I remember watching Boiling Point, Gordon Ramsay, I think it was 1992 or something. And there he is, feather blade of beef, done, rolled up exactly the same. I was like, what? There's no way that I kind of get ahead of the times here. And we just kind of,
it's all been
everything's been done. But it's still a beautiful way to cook it. But I just he was doing that back in 92. Here's us in 2020 still doing it. I don't know. But a lot of the old techniques. My old boss, he used to work in Harborside Grill in Arbroath actually, which is no longer Harborside Grill anymore, I think. But he used to always tell me about Chef salmon. That was his big thing. He was on about you have to decorate big bits of salmon and whatnot, the whole salmon for buffets and banquets. You'd spend 3 days doing a banquet or a buffet, and I was like, you don't do that anymore. Nobody, or at least I've not seen it ever.
No, nobody does that anymore. I've only been
nobody does it.
Do that once, and I was really young. I saw the chef doing it, but yeah, I mean, these kind of things aren't done, but. If you ever get a chance to hold that book, Danielle's, it's the back of it's the most interesting part. There's all these things. It's it looks like a massive tiered wedding cake. He slices into it, the whole thing's savory. It's just a big massive tureen all stacked up like a cake. Yeah, it's crazy. It's the most 70s, 80s thing you've ever seen. Why would we ever eat like that? But the skill level to get things looking like that is unbelievable.
I think there is that.
Check it out.
No, definitely will, mate. There's that kind of appreciation for the work that goes behind, even if you do look at it and like, why the fuck would you do that? You know, but then being able to appreciate
But you say that,
the effort that goes into
actually, how the fuck would you do that? Sure,
Oh, definitely.
it's impossible, but amazing. There's a dish on it. It's like I think it's a roast chicken or a roast turkey or something like that, and it looks like the whole bird. Then it's been sliced into a cross section and opened out, and it's like a mousse with a jelly in the middle and all this kind of like layered stuff all built up inside this roasted bird. It's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, you see a lot of stuff like that in desserts now these days, where kind of all the kind of pastry side of things, you like, you know, as a gel inside a mousse, inside a
like an entree,
something inside a sponge, inside a mirror glaze in the out, and you don't really see that much with savoury stuff, eh?
Yeah, just check it out. There's something else to see.
Yeah,
cool. Right,
thank you very much for that.
And see what we're doing. Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. It was good to talk.
You too. All the best.
Cheers. Speak to you later.
Bye.